Welcome to the next in our series of short video interviews where I ask what's next post-COVID-19 with our senior HR leadership. So today I'm delighted to say we have joining me is Neil Morrison. Neil is the Group HR Director at Severn Trent PLC. So good afternoon, Neil.
Hello there, good to see you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for joining me. Neil, I think what would be good to start, if you give us a little sort of flavour of your role with Severn Trent and your sort of over responsibilities, so we get to know a little bit more about you.
Sure. Okay, so I'm the HR Director at Severn Trent. We're a West Midlands-based utility, FTSE 100. There, I look after functions, so the normal stuff that you'd expect to be in there. But I also look after the communications functions, so our internal, our press office, brand marketing, and our community and education teams as well.
Okay, thanks, Neil. That's good. And did you say it's about 6,500 employees?
Yeah, we're about 6,500 employees across West Mids, East Mids, and we've got a Welsh business called Thehrdirector as well.
Snappy. Okay. So let's start with question one, Neil, which is what are your present key concerns and challenges for your employees and your organisation, I guess, right now?
Yeah, so I mean, we're in this third stage, it feels like, of the pandemic. So if the first stage was sort of March, when everybody sort of locked down, we then went into the summer where things opened up again. It felt like we were getting back to some semblance of normality. And then I guess now it feels like we're heading back into a situation that's a bit similar to March, but with 6 months worth of knowledge and experience of what we need to do. So, the challenges for us at the moment are we're an essential service. We've got enough to deliver that service, that we're keeping good social isolation, social distancing, and spacing and good COVID secure standards in our operational sites where our key workers are, that we're looking after people's mental health and well-being. I think people are getting fatigue of this whole experience, regardless of where they are. But then we're doing as much business as usual as we can. We very much take the view that you have to operate as if there's not going to be a vaccine, as if this is the situation that we're going to live in for forever. And so what decisions would you be making? How would you be investing? What would you be doing to support colleagues if that were the case? And so that means, continuing with things like our apprenticeship schemes and, getting behind the Kickstarter schemes, looking at skills and investing in skills and doing all those things just in a different environment and learning how to do that in a socially distanced and COVID secure way.
Yeah, I think I think that's the right attitude as well, because we have no, and in fact you kind of think these viruses are going to come and go, and this is the way of our world now, isn't it? So I like that. I think so could you give us a sense of, not necessarily going back over too much, but can you give us an idea of some of the things you might have put in place for that well-being piece, for the kind of engagement, for the, obviously we've got mass communications via video. What sort of things have you been, doing to keep the employees and, engaged and healthy and well?
Yeah, so I mean, going way back to where it feels way back, but I mean, it was probably only 6 months ago. One of the first things that we did was ask people to tell us whether they thought they had a vulnerability of any sort. And just to get in contact so we could put in place an individual plan for them, depending on what that was. And about 15% of our workforce actually came back and said, actually, I feel I've got some sort of vulnerability. And it really ranged from the things that we'd know, so someone who's being treated for cancer, for example, but also a lot of people with conditions or concerns that we didn't know about. Yeah. And so there's about 15% of our workforce that we've put an individual tailored support plan in place. We've rolled out a campaign around hidden disabilities because, again, a lot of our colleagues were saying, for example, I can't wear a face mask because of a hidden disability, and yet, if I'm in the offices or I'm at work, people are looking at me as if I'm somehow being reckless. So trying to support people with that. We've got a well-established mental health first aider program, so they've been coming to the fore, and we've created resources for people online that they can use around that. But I think The other point you made was around communication, and that's been so critical to us. So we ran an all-employee town hall events that we ran online, where we were just talking about the business and business strategy. We've done weekly updates. Communication, I think, has been quite tricky from government at times. People have interpreted it in their own way.
Yeah.
And so we've been very quick to try and put our position on it and our interpretation. We had an all manager event, which we ran socially, COVID secure, in person, one of our sites. So we were able to get people together to talk about some of the challenges that we had going on. And then also just making sure managers are equipped, because they're the front line of this. The line managers, are doing a wonderful, wonderful job of looking after their teams, speaking to their teams, supporting their teams. And our job as HR professionals is to give them the support and the resources to be able to do that, and to be there for them when they've got problems.
Yeah.
So we've done all of that, and then of course, the supporting people when they've got symptoms, when they are when they have to isolate because somebody in the family's got symptoms. We've made commitments. We put in place a 3-year pay deal so that people knew what their pay will be increasing over the next 3 years. We've guaranteed that we won't make any redundancies as a result of coronavirus, so to give people a bit of security and financial security as well. So a whole range of things across the remit.
Yeah, and again, that's I can see that gives people some confidence, and because there's so much anxiety and said about the future. So okay, good. Okay, so let's move on to sort of question 2 then. So question 2, I guess, as you rightly say, so the stage return, we've asked this question and obviously it's not happened, and it has happened. People said 2021. So I guess, where are you in your journey for a stage return, which I guess is more for the office-based staff, as opposed to you've got your key workers, your on-site workers, but I guess it comes into play. And I guess, what measures are you sort of implementing in terms of that safety, and just what does that look like going forward?
Yes, so we put a lot of effort into getting our buildings COVID secure back in the summer, and we opened up all of our main buildings that weren't already occupied by key workers in July and August for people to return. And we did a phased return for people, so we allowed them to come in for a day or 2 and get used to what it was like. We've got wonderful kind of one-way systems around the offices. We've specified which desks people can use. There's hand gel in every corner that you go around. We've got protocols in terms of spraying down desks at the beginning and end of work. We put in place a huge amount of work, videos, communication guides. And at the beginning of September, we were up to about a third of our workforce were back in. And that was about the maximum that we could get with social distancing and keeping good space for people. We've, as a central public service, we've kept those offices open now, and we've said that there's spaces available for people to use. We know that lots of people felt quite concerned about working at home for the next 6 months, and so some people have opted to come in more often. Some people come in for team meetings, for example, so we can create large space for them to have COVID secure team meetings and just do some of that collaboration work, check in on health and well-being with their teams, and making sure that they're doing a balance between the two. So we aren't back where we were in March. We've got more people in than we had in March, but obviously, we've got fewer people in than we had in December last year, because the office spaces just don't accommodate it. Yeah. But making sure really that people are focused on using that space for the activities that can't be done remotely. Yeah. So there's no point in coming in to do a whole load of emails unless you don't feel safe, secure, or you're worried about your mental well-being being at home. but there are other activities that you just can't do remotely that we're keeping the offices open for people to do.
Yeah. So it's evolving quite nicely in a way to say, because there's, as you rightly say, I always say it's very personal, because depending on your circumstances at home, your home setup, and if you've got 4 or 5 people who knows around you trying to work, or kids or whatever. So absolutely, certain people may want to kind of get into the office a bit quicker than others. So you'll see. And so what sort of, so obviously you're at that third at the moment. So where do you see that moving to? What sort of percentage are you getting from a sense of your employees who want to kind of bump this?
Yes, so I think it's pretty split, if I'm honest. I think, we've got a third of people who probably, want to be in the office every day, or want to be at work every day, out on site, or, in the community, because not all of them are office based. We've got a third who probably, are saying, if I don't have to come in, I really don't want to come in. And we're encouraging them to come in for, certain activities such as team meetings or things like that, just to keep connected. And then we've got a third of people, actually, I'll come in a couple of days a week because I need to catch up with this person, or I want to use the printing or the equipment that you've got at work that I don't have at home, and I just need to use it. So it's probably split a bit like that. I think what we're finding is that because we are a regional business, and it's easier to travel into our offices and easier to travel into what we're doing, that most people are more comfortable with doing that.
Yeah.
But we're trying to encourage people not to do the unnecessary journeys or the unnecessary trips if they don't need to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of HRDs who have got city-based offices, and it's public transport comes into play. And as you rightly say, you haven't kind of really got that too much, have you? So I gather. Okay, and then I guess I think we touched on it a little bit at the start before we started this, but again, that sense of I guess is your employees coming in and what that office is like when you first arrive back in, because it's very different perhaps to when they left, back in March, let's say.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, we've kind of evolved that as well, because we've been open throughout. Initially, we took a very kind of, I suppose, health and safety perspective, and taped a lot of stuff off, and confined a lot of areas. And when we were working up to reoccupying the offices, we knew that we needed to make them a bit more welcoming, a bit more encouraging.
Yeah.
And so we've done some fantastic work over the summer to really do that. So our brand colours are quite bright pinks and purples and blues. And so on the floors, you have one-way systems that show you which way to walk around the corridors. If you go into our lifts, there's spots that you can stand on and spots that you can't stand on again. And what we're trying to do is encourage people to risk assess themselves, the circumstances that they're in. As I say, there's hand sanitizer, there's sprays around everywhere so people can clean things down. And then for leadership, it's really role modeling that, and making sure that we're doing that. We're cleaning our desks. When we're hand sanitizing regularly. We're showing people that that's how we do it. And the feedback we've had has been overwhelmingly positive. So over 90% of people who've been back in the office said they felt safe in there, which we were really pleased with. We did some lovely videos beforehand of people walking around, so you could watch a video before you came back in that showed what reception would be like, what the lifts would be like. We've got one-way systems on our stairs and our corridors, as I say. So trying to make it just as familiar as possible, but as structured as possible, so that people feel safe.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. There's a lot of talk about these walkthrough videos, which have been really, really good to actually do, isn't it, before people do come back in. And I guess, then people are starting to feel more comfortable, and perhaps they want to be in the office more or less, depending on their situation. Okay, good. So let's move on to question 3 then. So I guess this is more the interesting one for me, because it kind of like, this is looking at, as we said, this is an incredible time in history. So these are opportunities now for me, and I think I'm quite intrigued to hear what you're looking in terms of exploring for not just the organisation, but the journey, destination, because obviously that may have changed. And how do you see that panning out for you, your HR function, and ultimately employees and your organisation, sort of long term?
Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? I've heard this a number of times when I've talked to people that said that things that we previously thought were impossible prior to March all happened within about 3 weeks because they had to. You know, whether that's technology or whether that's working practices, and certainly we've seen that as well, that things that we perhaps hadn't been able to get our heads around as concepts, we just had to because of necessity. But I think some of the biggest learnings have also been some of the things that we haven't done, some of the things we've stopped. So a lot of our operational sites were saying that their site standards were improving. They were finding that they were able to have safer working environments to deliver their standards and practices. And kind of my reflection on that is probably because they were doing less, perhaps unnecessary management stuff that we would quite often ask them to do as part of their kind of work. So they'd focused right back on the basics. What are the basics that we need in order to keep water flowing, keep safe drinking water on supply always for our customers? So there's some interesting kind of lessons about actually what additional tasks and activities have we built in that maybe aren't as necessary.
Yeah.
You know, so interviewing, for example, is an interesting one. You know, we've been interviewing remotely and predominantly. You know, some of the time that takes out of the process, maybe that makes it more efficient. You know, maybe there's something we can learn from that we can introduce. You know, some of the things that maybe we would have asked people to do around performance management or performance reviews, you know, we've lightened that up. Maybe that makes life easier. Maybe we've over-engineered some of these things.
Yeah.
So I think there's some interesting learning there. Communication, I think we've definitely learned the importance of, you know, that really regular drumbeat of communications. And we were pretty good at it before, if I'm totally honest. It's one of the best organisations I've worked in for it. But you know, we really are exceptional at it now. Anticipating the next series of questions that are going to be asked and answering them before they're asked, and being forward thinking in that way. And then the other thing I think we've really learned is to focus on the individual. And you know, the pandemic has been a very individual experience. My experience of it will have been very different to yours. You know, it's different whether you've got children, whether they're school age, whether their exams were cancelled, whether you're caring for a parent, whether you live in a house with a garden, or you live in a flat, whether you live alone or with other people, whether you live in a abusive relationship or a safe relationship. There are all these factors, and we've had to navigate through that and understand that more. And I think that's a real valuable lesson that we want to hold on to for the future, is just recognizing and having empathy with different experience of work and of life.
Yeah, I think, and that again has come through loud and clear in a number of issues. That empathy piece, that seeing people at home in their environment and things that are coming through, and finding out, and as you say, this very individualistic, I guess, approach in terms of, as you say, very, very much so. Everyone's different. Okay, and then I guess, I mean, I did read a little bit, obviously, about you know, in terms of, because I know that it was 1974, wasn't it? Severn Trent was sort of founded, which is some time ago, isn't it? But so what about purpose? Because I know you've got a piece in here about purpose, which is all around the local community and the environment. And so, any changes there in terms of? I mean, it seems quite well planned out, set out, really, to me, anyway. But
yeah, do you know what? I actually think the organisations that will emerge from this best are the ones that have been focused on purpose, identity, and culture for the last however many years.
Yeah.
Because during a period of uncertainty, what it does is it gives you a compass. gives you a compass that you can use to navigate decision making. And it may not be perfect compass, but at least it's something. It gives you guidance, and we've really doubled down on that during this period of time. So we set up a COVID response fund, which we donated £1 million to charities within our region who were struggling because their funds had dried up because of coronavirus. We reduced terms of payment to our SMEs to on receipt, so that we were able to keep our supply chain going and give them a level of financial security. We've been focused on continuing our education, our work experience program virtually, so that we're providing support to schools, both in terms of water usage and in terms of careers. All of those aspects are really part of who we are and what we're about. And it's always been important to us, but my golly, it really becomes important during a period of time like this. And it gives colleagues a real sense of pride in who we are and what we do. And, we are lucky in some ways because of our financial model that we have the ability to continue to do this. But the decision to do that is a choice. And it's one we fundamentally believe is the right thing to do. So we'll be fully getting behind the Kickstarter program. We've doubled the number of apprentices that we've taken on this year because we can. We're in a position where we can, and it's the right thing to do for our communities.
Yeah, no, I think the whole thing about purpose has been the interesting one as well for me, because I think you're right, and I think that's a very good way to look at it. If you had it already in place, then that makes sense. But I think people are hopefully, another good thing that's coming from this is the ones that perhaps haven't, they are now starting, because people want to work for companies with a purpose, don't they? They want a purpose to come to work. Okay, and finally, Neil, just question 4, really, just give us your personal view. We've talked a lot about personal take on this. So, but for you as an HR leader at the moment, these challenging times, I mean, your own health and well-being, these are key things. So how has it been for you?
I think, we talked earlier about 3 stages to this, and I think probably it's been different in different parts. So very early on, I think it was very stressful, very pressurized, going back to March. It was pretty much a 24/7 gig that we were operating, and as an essential service, you're obviously operating around the clock as well. So that was pretty pressurized and hard. I think you then move into sort of the summer, which was a little bit easier, and then we're probably cranking back up to it. And I suppose like everyone else, we're human beings as well. So we've got kids whose exams have been cancelled and returned from university, and family who are elsewhere in the country. So you're putting all of those things together. So looking after a family of 6,500 people during the day, and then looking after your other family kind of around that and in the evening and at weekends. And so it's pretty pressurized, but I guess ultimately that's why we do the job. And I think it's been a real opportunity for HR professionals to step forward and to show the value and the contribution that they can make to businesses.
Yeah, and do you feel, I mean, a lot of people, there's, at the start of this, there was a lot of people who say exhausted or equally energized, because of the potential for change.
I think, I mean, I don't feel exhausted by it at all. A little bit bored by it at times. I think, if I'm honest, you end up particularly at the moment, it feels a bit like Groundhog Day, like we're going back to something that we've experienced before and relatively recently. But I think, I've got a fabulous team. I've got a fantastic bunch of colleagues on the executive committee, and you get support and energy from them for the work that you do. And I think you've just got to find the small moments of happiness, haven't you? It's you can't do a lot of the things that you wanted to do before, but you can still do some things, and you can still get enjoyment. And you've just got to take a bit of a positive attitude to it all.
Yeah, no, I agree. Positive attitude and celebrate those enjoyment moments, aren't they? And that's kind of makes the brain sort of think differently. Brilliant. Right, that's terrific. Thanks, Neil. Thanks for spending some time today with me. Fascinating to see how this has affected, Severn Trent and your good self, and kind of how you're tackling it, and also that looking ahead. I think you're one step ahead at the moment in terms of readiness, preparedness, which is really, really good. So join me next time as I catch up with another HR senior leader to find out how they're navigating and exploring the challenges as we can continue through this and look at the opportunities ahead. So Neil, thanks for your time. Appreciate you joining me.
Thank you very much.